Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. I'm at Narrows Reserve today, or as it's more informally called, the Narrows. Basically, the longest trail is the river trail, which follows along the Little Miami River here. And then there's also some big wood trails. There's also a smaller kind of meadow, and it's a very tight-knit place. There's not really any wide open space, but it's definitely great for like woodland birds, like warblers. There's always tons of woodpeckers. I've been hearing them all morning so far. Like pileated woodpeckers knocking back and forth. And now this place is great, but it's always very busy. There's always a lot of dog walkers. It's a very popular spot in my town, and so it's always nice to go, really early in the morning, especially on the weekday like I am right here. And I find that just, very helpful to just kind of allow yourself to focus, and you really don't have to worry about people, kind of, just distracting you or getting in the way, I guess, if you're trying to make an image. So I have an idea of what to expect, maybe some spring wildflowers that are starting to bloom up, or some warblers. So we might get some birds, might get some landscapes, maybe some water-long exposure. Really anything's up for grabs today. I welcomed the day with a nice pink and orange sunrise, but that was not a compelling composition to be found. So I'm just going to keep along the trail here. So I got a little composition here, something a little bit different from what I previously have been working on. So I got garlic mustard here again, and instead of doing a macro, I wasn't really thinking it would work with this kind of subject. I wanted to show kind of a more intimate landscape with the woodland tree that it's kind of just positioned right behind. I thought that was a little bit different, so I'm using my small telephoto here, zoomed in at the regular 75 millimeters. And for my settings, I got 1/5 of a second, f13, and ISO 400. I just think it's very interesting that you can photograph a subject in many different lenses, focal lengths, different styles, just kind of different angles, perspectives. You get the point, but you could just, there's always a whole bunch of possibilities if you switch around your gear and just, try different things on the exact same subject. And each one's going to, impact the mood or just kind of the composition. The way the finished image will look is going to be radically different for each of those things that you choose to do. Another important consideration to make when composing your photograph is just the distance between the background, if there is anything in the background, and the primary subject that you're focusing on. Because if you're using wider apertures, let's say f5.6, any of those kind of the lower f-stop numbers, it's going to create it's going to drop out the background out of focus. And if there's nothing really nearby that's behind the subject immediately, then it's just going to be a nice cool blur, and it's going to put all that focus on your subject. Like in this case where I have a tree that's immediately behind the subject that I'm focusing on, it's going to keep that in focus really no matter what aperture you use. Both the level of which your camera sensor, your camera plane is positioned, if it's parallel and it's low to the ground, if your subject's low to the ground, for example, then it's also going to drop out that background a lot more than if you're up top and you're kind of angled down towards the subject. So it's just like an important thing to keep, consider when you're, composing photographs. All right, the sun's peeking through the clouds right now. Instead of throwing a fuss about it, I decided to work with it. And so I got these, basically these leaves right here, and they're backlit, which I think is very interesting when it comes to leaves, because it reveals all the veiny kind of structures of the, it reveals the intricate details of the leaves. So I switched to macro, and I haven't used this lens in a while, but it's a Canon 50mm prime lens. You can see here mounted on a EF25 Canon extension tube. So it's nice and portable and compact, as you can tell. But I've just been getting in real close, and I've been kind of using my hand because I don't have a lens hood with me. For this specific lens, I've been just covering kind of the top of my hand over the lens, and I'm not using any filters, as you can tell. But I find the details to be really nice. It just kind of illuminates the whole leaf, kind of gives it a whole new kind of meaning and look to it. I don't know what it is, but there's just something really unique about the Narrows. Just the way it follows along the Little Miami River here. And they got all these little low-lying plants. And just you walk through it in the path. I mean, the path is really narrow. And it's got a really unique habitat, I guess. You know, it's got these dry woods, it's got wet woods, it's got, you know, like most nature places, it has a little bit of everything, but you know, certain ones feel a little more unique than others. I definitely must say I much prefer this side trail that kind of is a little less traveled, I guess, the road less traveled. It's kind of off the beaten path. The main foot trail that most people take, because it's much more flat, drier. It can get muddy at times over there if it gets real wet. Yeah, most people go on there. It's much wider, that kind of thing. It's much more, I guess, forgiving is the word. It's much more flat. I definitely prefer the side trail over here just because it has more going for it. You can see much more birds. Like I've been seeing a couple of different like warbler species, different kinds of butterflies, all the different wildflowers you prefer, and you get to see the scenic view of the Little Miami River here, which is very nice to see. You're just, I mean, look, I'm like right at the edge here, and you're much closer to it. So I got back on the main footpath for just a second before I kind of diverge off to the side here. I just wanted to like reminisce on a older photo from 2017 that I took of this tree where they have kind of like some hanging like little nails in there, I guess as like a little like step stool kind of ladder thing. And then there's a swinging rope hanging off of the tree. And I'll show you the image here, but it's not an image that I'm really too proud of because it's, I don't know, it's older, and a lot of my earliest images, I bet a lot of other photographers can relate, is that I kind of over edited them, or I kind of added some, I guess you could consider like over the top effects, and I'd say this one's no exception. But it's just kind of cool to see how far I've come, you know, my development, all that kind of stuff in my portfolio. It's kind of a bummer, but I was wanting to go on this Vista Trail here, but looks like it's closed for construction. One thing while I'm thinking about it, it's gonna be a little bit of a ramble mode, but the forecast, you know, I don't trust it really. It's not really too accurate because, you know, a couple days ago it said it was going to be really rainy. It wasn't. It was perfectly fine. It was sunny with some clouds. So I went out for the evening on a shoot. And then today it's supposed to, like early in the morning, like 3 a.m., supposed to get heavy rain, thunderstorms, you know, thunder, lightning, all that kind of stuff. Jeez. Choose the path of most resistance here. Jeez. Okay. And then it's like perfectly fine. It's like almost 80 degrees. The wind's kind of high gusts, but other than that, you know, it's cloudy with some sun. It looks perfectly fine to me. So it's just weird how they forecast the weather like that. And I know it's not 100% reliable, but it's like I don't trust it 100%. Even then, it's, you know, you can get some amazing photographs in dramatic weather. You know I have some of my best ones are in like torrential downpours and, you know, other kind of stuff like storms. You just gotta be persistent, I guess. One little technique to try is just to change your field of view and your angle when you're photographing macro wildflowers like this. Because I noticed if I'm doing it from an angle kind of like this, on this Virginia Spring Beauty here, is that it just kind of, it has this, it doesn't show it, it makes it more two-dimensional, but I want to really show and accentuate the flower in like a 3-dimension. So what I did is I did more of a top-down like this, and it actually accentuated more of the different parts of the flower, and it showed off the color a lot better than when it was at an angle where it kind of covered up, certain petals would cover up the other petals, you know what I mean? It just felt like it made a much more effective photograph in this case. And my settings are 250th of a second, f10, and ISO 1000, just to make sure that I can really get a nice sharp photo with all this high wind today. So we're gonna try it again here. And I'm using manual focus. rediscovered another photograph I took in 2018 of this driftwood that's kind of out here, and it looks like it's been almost fully submerged from the previous time I saw it, you know, less than a year ago. So here's the original photograph I took. It's a nice little abstract I made, but nothing too special. The problem was there was a lot of camera shake, and I couldn't really control that no matter what my settings were. So I just kind of, it's not my favorite photograph, but I did definitely like the idea. And one thing I wanted to think of is when I'm coming here next, which would be now, all this time later, is to retry it. But you know, it's already too far gone, it looks like. Plus the reflections would be hard to kind of get back and have it still, you know, retain that original shape that it had in the original photograph. I came to the realization recently when I was editing a batch of raw files on my computer is that a lot of them are coming up underexposed, and I just gotta stress the importance of really reading that histogram and to always expose to the right. And then not only that, but I noticed on my LCD on my camera, you know, the back screen, I realized that I had the brightness up way too high, so I was having a lot of underexposed images, but I was just kind of like ignoring it and ignoring the histogram. So you just gotta learn from that, and learn from me at least. Make sure you go through your camera settings if you haven't already, and then make sure your brightness on your LCD is pretty much all the time. I want to keep it in the middle. I think on mine it's the number 4 would be the middle point. It depends on your camera or DSLR or whatever you use to photograph, so it's not too bright, not too dark, because what it does is it kind of tricks your eye into thinking, you know, an image, like in my case I had the brightness all the way almost up to the max, so I had a lot of underexposed images that I found out later on when I got home, but they actually weren't that bright as I thought they were. And you know, even though I had the fidelity of editing a raw file, it still didn't really help. You can't bring back all that, you know, because it would introduce digital noise if you try and up the exposure and the highlights on an underexposed raw file. So yeah, just like I said, make sure to pay attention to the histogram, always exposed to the right on the histogram, and not only that, but make sure to check your screen brightness on your back of the camera, and make sure it's just at an even amount so you're not tricking your eye into thinking some images are overexposed or underexposed. Alright, I made it to the Narrows Prairie, and I'm actually overlooking now all these dead deciduous trees over here in this kind of field. And then off to the left here of me is the meadow. But over here is probably one of my favorite parts of the Narrows, honestly. One of my favorite features is they call it the Big Woods Trail. And you can find lots of white-tailed deer, and it's just got like lots of tall, as you can tell, it gets up on this giant hill. It's beautiful sights, honestly. So I'm going to take a little break here, but I'm going to get up there in a second. So this little stone structure right here, I was with a buddy of mine about 2 years ago. It's actually the first time I've been to the Narrows for photography specifically. And I actually climbed up the top here, and I was just like, hey man, said his name so-and-so. It's just like, take a picture of me, and so he did. Feels like a little bit like a throwback, I guess. Let me try and get the pose going. So I'm trying something a little different in the Big Woods here. I'm trying to like a intimate landscape with my small telephoto, and I'm just, you know, it's compressing the distance in between the background and the foreground, where I focused a third of the way into the scene of just all these, you know, these tall standing trees, and then just, that's all it is really, is just an abstract pattern. But I also am bracketing it, so I got a high exposure, low exposure, and a middle exposure, and then later on in the computer I'm going to edit them to make it look more artful, which I think will look really cool. And just add a little bit of, just kind of like a little bit of visual punch is what I'd call it. You know, it's just because since all the foliage and leaves on them, these deciduous trees are green right now. So I think it would look a lot more dramatic, I think. And it would be much more about the textures and patterns. Alright, I haven't tried water long exposure in a long time. So here we are kind of at where this creek kind of stream flows into the Little Miami River, and so I got my small telephoto on as usual, and I got the live LCD live view mode. For my settings, got third of a second, f16, and ISO 100, and then I'm using a polarizer to knock out any reflections. And I think it's gonna be a very nice kind of horizontally driven kind of long exposure. Another thing to add is that the sensor plane is actually perfectly level and parallel with the stream. It's not looking down or up. It's just right there straight on, and it looks really nice that way. Alright, when I said the Narrows was pretty narrow with the trails that just line the Little Miami River, kind of lied. There's actually a whole different other loop trail. It's up on a big hill next to what's kind of like the headquarters, Greene County Parks and Trails. It's like their nature center. And so I'm going to show you here in a moment the Raptor Center that they have, and it's a pretty unique feature just because most nature reserves don't have a Raptor Center for injured or orphaned raptors and other kind of wildlife. But I think the only other one that I can think of that's in Greene County is the one at Glen Helen. Which that one's much bigger than this one, but this one's still great nonetheless. Just to see these birds of prey up close, and it's very fascinating. Just see how they are, and then they get raised and they get to be released. Alright, I'm here at the Raptor Center, and there's a turkey vulture that's been here for years. I've seen it for a long time. I believe it has a permanently injured wing. Yeah, here's a better view. Poor little guy. These guys get a bad rap, but I like them. Basically nature's janitors, since they clean up roadkill and eat it. And over here we got barred owl. These guys are very common at night. Here is a eastern screech owl. It's in that little nest box there. I thought while I'm here at the Raptor Center, I might as well try some target practice with my telephoto lens on the injured raptors here. And actually, I thought of one little pro tip to suggest is if you're at any place with like a Raptor Center or a zoo, or any place there's captive animals or injured, orphaned animals like these raptors, any place with a cage, a zoo, stuff like that, you want to shoot in the widest aperture you can and get as close to the fence as you can within reason. Obviously, you want to follow the rules and regulations and be safe doing it. So, but I feel like this really helps because the widest aperture helps you eliminate the out of focus rings that you might see commonly on a lot of zoo photos. So, just one little pro tip. Here's a red-tailed hawk. This guy's been here for a while as well. I think about almost as long as the turkey vulture has been. He's awake and very active. Look at him. Looks like he has an injured wing. Since you see that feather on the left side, looks like he got hurt somehow. So it's pretty cool that one of the park staff actually came out to the Raptor Center, and apparently it was feeding time. So yeah, I got to watch basically all of them feed and stuff, and it was pretty cool. I got some different unique shots of them eating and some video of that as well. It's pretty cool. It seems like they're kind of spoiled, they just get food given to them. But yeah, this is a pretty good way to end of the day. I think this will be it though. So thank you guys for watching. This has been Narrows Reserve, and make sure to get on out here, guys. Thank you. Have a good day.